All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mike Wilson. Mike, I don't know if you've seen any of my podcasts, but we're going to do this one the same way. I want to take it all the way back. Before we talk about the man that you are today, the journey that led you to this point, like the trials and tribulations, let's start with who you were as a young man.
Okay.
Where you were born and raised, like what things were really influential to you, and then we'll start to craft your story.
Well, Let's start right at the beginning. I was born into a family with a father with some mental health issues and was a battered child for the first few years of my life. My mother and he divorced, and then she married the person I call my father today, and he's been my father ever since I was 4 years old. And so that's kind of where it all started. Hardworking. I hate to say poor because we always ate, always had food on the table, but a hard-working family, large family, 6 brothers and sisters, mom and dad, yeah. So we stayed together right up till we grew up and moved away. But that's where it kind of all started. Bronson, Michigan, a little ways from here, a couple hours from here.
Do you have any recollections, or let's say trauma is a very common word that people use, from that young period of your life, or do you think it was being 4 and younger? Like, were there lingering effects of that impact from your father? Did you remember the man that he was before he was out of the picture? Talk a little bit about that.
I kind of do. I mean, 4 is kind of early in life, and I remember kind of the last couple of episodes before he was gone, and of course I don't dwell on any of that, but I think at first I think I lacked confidence due to it, but then I grew to be more confident, to have more self-awareness from that in growing up, and so like I said, my stepfather, who I call my father, was he's a hard-working man, and he expected a lot of hard work out of his sons for the most part, and my sisters, I'm sure, were busy too, but me being the oldest boy, him and I spent a lot of time together. I learned hard work. I learned, and to this day, my 82-year-old dad, he believes that the day's done when your head hits the pillow, so he's still a hard worker, 82 years old. And so, just kind of grew up in that environment. He was a lumberjack. He was a concrete finisher. I mean, the hard jobs. And so, and that's how he brought me up and gave me good self-efficacy and courage, and kind of brought me out of that first phase of my life.
Yeah, that's huge. Having somebody that you can look up to model your life after, or your behavior after, where you can say, like, okay, the first example that I got, like, that's not the way.
Right.
Because a lot of times, unfortunately, like, people that are raised in terrible environments can grow up to be terrible people too.
Yeah.
They're almost like victims of a circumstance, and then they become the people that cause the same type of chaos. You went the other direction. You had a better man come into your life, and he really guided you for, like, hey, this is what hard work is.
Yeah.
This is what it means to step up to the plate.
Yeah.
These are the things that promote success in life, because if you work hard, you build your competency, you're able to do a large variety of tasks, that's what'll build your confidence.
Absolutely. And I feel that firmly, I tell him that on a regular basis, thanks for working me to death when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So,
You may not see it at the time, but he really was giving you the necessary ingredients for the correct recipe.
Yeah.
So as you start going through school, what do you think life has in store for you? Did you have a certain dream when you were young about the man that you were going to be?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to be a hard worker. He in my teen years, he was picked up milk from farmers, and it was in cans, 10-gallon cans, and so they're 120-pound cans, and he did that on a regular basis. And I wanted to do that, and I was kind of a crazy kid. I wanted to own a Harley Davidson motorcycle and be a roughneck and do all that kind of stuff, and so that's the route I was going for. That was I was dropped out of school at 16. This is the mid-'70s, and so it wasn't uncommon for young men to drop out and go to work, go right to work, especially if they were from large families. And so dropped out of school, went to work for my dad, and the military didn't come into play until my dad had sold his trucking business, and I was kind of left no education. This was early 1980s when Michigan cars had bumper stickers that said "Last one out of Michigan, turn out the lights." They're all heading for Florida and Texas for jobs, and so really didn't have nothing in my life, and so had a fiance and a baby on the way, and it was like, I got to change something here. And so there was an ad in the newspaper, and it was for a smart-time, part-time job. Call this phone number. And so turned out it was the Michigan Army National Guard, and a matter of a few hours, the recruiter was banging on my door, and a few hours later, I was on my way. And so,
wow, that's incredible. And I don't want to skip too much of that part of your story before we go into the military experience. So you dropped out of school at 16. You say it's pretty common back then, and basically you're just going all in on being a hard worker. Like, hey, if I put the hours in and I'm grinding, like I can make a living like this.
Right.
But then it sounds like the times got pretty rocky. I mean, you got a fiance, you got a baby coming. That's an immense pressure in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and, I had my father's job to rely on. I didn't have credibility in the work world. I just worked for my father. And so he paid me relatively good, and had enough money to buy cigarettes and car parts. Outside of that, I didn't see much of a need. That's right. What more do I need? And so that's kind of where it was. And then he got an offer to sell his business, and he was done and gone. And I didn't get to go with the business. I had to do something else. And so
that's massive. A lot of the people that I talk to, some of the most challenging moments of their life, also some of the moments that really springboard them into the people that they're meant to become, are in those like loss of identity moments. It's where you were the worker, you're for the company. Like you said, you could buy your car parts, you could build a muscle car, and you could go home to the woman you love, and life is good. And then all of a sudden, that's gone.
In an instant.
And that's what I'm saying. And then all of a sudden, it's a blank slate. And you're standing there going, where do I show up to work tomorrow?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I didn't know. I kind of floundered a little bit. I went to Texas and with some friends that moved down there for the work, and I tried a couple of different things. I tried landscaping, and I drove truck for a tile manufacturer that delivered tile to, Texas was growing, malls and restaurants, and so everybody was tiling everything. And so I did that for a little while. I get that first paycheck. It's like, well, that ain't what I was expecting. I was expecting something a little more than that, And so finally I was like, I got to do something different. I can't be in Texas with my fiance and baby in another state, And so back to Michigan I went.
100%. So you call that ad, recruiter shows up, and they say, hey, this is the military National Guard. Kind of tell me about that period of your life, why you made the decision, what your expectations were versus reality, and then start to unfold the military story.
Yeah, so this was one of the first times in my life where I'd seen good consequences come from good work. And so, the recruiter told me, we'll help you get your GED. You got to have one of them to be in. You can't be in the military without it. And so we'll help you get that. And they did. And they very quickly got me into some testing and took the tests and got that. And I started learning that, bad consequences, bad behavior, bad consequences, good behavior, good consequences. It isn't always about hard work. Sometimes it's just about good behavior, And so my soon-to-be, she ended up being my wife before I went to basic training, wasn't real hip on the idea of me being gone again. But at this point, there wasn't much of a choice. And so we headed out for basic training, and I found the world I belonged in. And it was a world of, hard work and good behavior. You'll excel. That's all you have to do is just follow the rules and do your job, and you can excel. And so
you'd say the foundation that was set up in your life by your father, by that business, by all the lessons about, like I said, work ethic and all those things, they just put you perfectly primed to step into the military. It was almost like, hey, this is a brotherhood of people that are trying to be like me, or at least the leadership is asking that these are the qualities that we focus on, the conscientiousness, the hard work, the doing the right thing. It's not always just about working hard. Sometimes it's about doing the right thing.
That's exactly right. And so it didn't take me long to figure that out. I'd come from a hardworking atmosphere, and so I joke about it, but I tell people basic training was a little bit of a vacation. because, at least I got Sundays off. And so, so to speak. But, and so, I learned quite quickly that if you are, if you behave well and you work hard, people will follow you because they want to be like that. And so a lot of the young soldiers I was with, even from basic training, I felt that, they were following me, and I was like, just do as I do, just work hard and to follow the rules, and life will be good.
Did people take notice of this? Like, did you start to excel through the ranks at a little bit faster of a pace because if you're already starting to become a leader and you're actually embodying the characteristics that they're pushing upon you, and other people are seeing that and they're modeling behavior after you, it seems like that's a man that would kind of stand out, that would kind of rise the ranks. And how quickly did you know, like, this is it for me? Like, I'm going all in on this career.
Yeah. You know what? I don't think I ever did. I will tell you, in basic training, I was there about 2 weeks, and they picked squad leaders and platoon sergeants and platoon leaders. And whoever my squad leader was, I don't even remember his name at this point, the drill sergeant said, he's done. Wilson, you're the squad leader. And I just like, okay, this is the new job. I didn't put any thought into it. This is, leadership. This is growth. This is, nope, you said you do this, and you take care of those 5 guys, and that's your job. So, okay, that's my new job. That's what I'll do. A couple weeks later, platoon leader, you're out. Wilson, you're the new platoon leader. All right, now I got to take care of 30 guys. Okay, got it. What do you want me to do? And so, and I make it sound like it was real easy, but it wasn't real easy. But that was my first real taste of leadership. But I didn't think about it as I'm a leader. I'm a leader of men. I'm growing. I was thinking, this is the job they gave me, and I got to do it. All 30 of you Gomers got to be able to tear this weapon down and put it back together. That's on me. And so it was kind of my first taste of that.
Honestly, it was probably good, the fact that you were not overly thinking the challenge. You weren't questioning your self-worth, or you were like, hey, I'm assigned a job. I'm a worker. I know how to get a job done. I'm going to do it.
That's right.
So it's like that's almost the perfect stance to be in that point in your life, because you're how old are you at this point? Maybe 24, 25?
Back then, I was 19.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking the period working for your dad's company lasted longer. So you're only like 19.
A couple of years I worked for my dad, yeah. Well, that seemed like forever at 60,
100%.
So,
yeah, it definitely would. Mm-hmm. So rewind me back. What is the military like in the early 80s? Like, I kind of have a taste for what it's like now. What was the military like back then? I mean, because there was a period of our history where Top Gun came out and all those things went, where, man, you were an American hero if you were part of the military, and you were... Was that the sense of pride and patriotism you felt back then? Was it? Explain to me the early 80s military.
We were transitioning. The Vietnam War had only been over for 5 years. I mean, literally over. 75, And so this is 80, 81, 82 time frame. So it's not been long since the Vietnam War. And so there's still not a real sense of national worth for our military at that point. There were still a lot of people that were just like, trying to forget those years. And so, and the military was in transition. It was growing and changing. After those 5 years, Reagan had just become president. He's, wanting to grow the military, went from plain green uniforms to camouflage uniforms, and just this transition taking place. And so I just kind of think I was part of that transition and growth and the change. And when I was in the National Guard, I wasn't in active duty, but the basic training's all the same. All the training's all the same. And so the National Guard had a different mission then than they have now. They were, they got the nickname Weekend Warriors because that's what they did. They drilled on the weekends, 2 weeks in the summer, and that was basically it. And so there was but in the meantime, I had to keep a regular civilian job, go to school, all those things. So it was a little different than it is today. Today's modern warrior is a little different.
So let's talk about, a lot of people reference Reagan's presidency as one of the greatest ever, for the people that valued him as a president. Talk to me about that point of your life. Like, you're working a job, you're going to school, what are you're majoring, you're in the National Guard, Reagan is president. Just kind of take me back, let me experience, because I was born in 87. So as you're telling the story,
you missed all the 80s.
I haven't even been born yet. I'm not even there yet. So take me back to that period of life, like life's good, state of the country, things like that, and then start to unfold as you travel down the course of your military, career.
Yeah, so, I think the U.S. was growing. It was bouncing back from the Vietnam War. It was bouncing back from a tough economy. You know, we saw the first fuel shortages in the 70s, and the price of gas going through the roof, tripling and quadrupling in a matter of months. And so it was all starting to settle down from that. And so, joining the military did good for me because there were people that wanted me then. They're like, you're in the military, you're a veteran at that time. We'd like to hire you. So I started working in a paper mill. And a paper mill swing shifts, and so you rotate shifts every 7 days. So I'd work third shift 7 days, have a couple of days off, work second shift 7 days, have a day off, work day shift 7 days, have 3 or 4 days off. And so it gave me opportunities to be home during the day, home in the evening, home overnight. So I had all these every 7 days. You count on that changing, and so again, being what I consider a hard worker, the National Guard would call and say, we have some extra duty if you'd like to come in and do that, And so, next Tuesday I'll be off for a couple of days. I'd be glad to do that. So I always say I became the top drawer volunteer. So when they were looking for volunteers, they'd open the top drawer, and these are the guys. Yeah. So I was top drawer volunteer, and so that helped me grow in the military, all while I was continuing to grow in my civilian job. And so,
Where were you going to school at the time?
I wasn't going to school. I was just working.
Got it. Okay, so you were working and in the military at the same time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, tell me the pivotal moments of your military career while you're young, where either you went through a big transition, you got promoted to your first major position. I mean, it sounds like platoon leader is still a big jump right off the bat. Hey, you're squad leader. Hey, you're platoon leader. But where are the moments that really stand out in your mind that you experienced either a lot of growth or a major hardship or anything like that?
So platoon leader and squad leader in basic, they take that all away from you when you finish basic. And so it's not like a promotion. And so I became a sergeant, 3 stripes, a buck sergeant they call it, in 1980, it was either 85 or 86, somewhere in that area. And I think that's when it dawned on me. Wow, I have responsibility. I'm not responsible just for equipment and timeliness. I'm responsible for other human beings. I don't have to just be there on time. Now I got 4 other people that have to be there on time, that have to be shiny shoes and straight out, uniforms, and I'm responsible for them. And so that was the kind of the first time that hit me, and I liked it. I liked the responsibility of being. I would never consider myself over other people, but responsible for their health, well-being, growth, all those things. And so that's when it started in the early 80s.
And being a leader is incredibly rewarding when you can get results out of people.
Yeah.
When you can pull someone to be better than they even believe they are. I mean, I know it as a coach. It is an incredibly rewarding thing. And people tend to have a lot of gratitude for people that can bring out the best in them. And sometimes that's an ugly process. Sometimes you got to be on somebody's ass to get them to step up, but it's because they haven't developed the mechanisms and the behavioral patterns and the discipline necessary to not only show up on time, but at your best self with all the things that you need, et cetera, et cetera. So as you start to become a leader, did you really invest in what does it mean to be a leader when you're young, or did that come much later in your life? Because leadership is a very dynamic thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there is so much that goes into being a good leader and a good mentor, guide, etc. When does that really start to become a focal point for you, if at all, at that point in your life?
I think it was not too long after that, a year or two later, in the paper mill, I got promoted to a shift supervisor. And so now I'm responsible for people at my job, and I'm responsible for people in my military career. And so that was probably, like I said, 87, 88 time frame. And it started becoming impactful to me that what I say, what I do, the decisions I make, the direction I give is impacting other people. And so I couldn't say that I was an expert at it, but I did start realizing how that impacted other people. And so right around the early 90s, I was getting ready to be promoted again. Desert Storm happened. I got the call on December 26th that your unit's being mobilized, and you've got about 6 or 7 days to get to the armory and get your equipment around, and we're heading out. And so I deployed for Desert Storm, and that then leadership changed, because none of us knew what was happening, but we still had to be in charge. You still had to lead these people, not knowing what's around the corner, not knowing what's ahead. And so my first real military leadership, we ended up going to Germany and picking up a unit's worth of equipment. We were a contingency force in the event the war escalated. Of course, the war didn't escalate, and then we just spent 6 months in Germany. And so I still consider it a deployment. It was a heck of a learning experience, and an opportunity, because soldiers in idle time are even more difficult to manage than in the field time. And so, because now they're at loose ends, alcohol's within arm's reach, payday every 15 days. And so that was a lesson in leadership, was trying to keep them, doing the right thing. So
the day after Christmas, your phone rings and they say you're deploying overseas for Desert Storm.
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment? Is that
absolutely.
I was going to say, that has to be such a vivid memory of wait, this is real. Like, I'm leaving to go overseas.
Yeah.
At that point, are you married and you have your child at home, right? And it's like, hey, I have to leave. What is that like to a family?
Yeah, so I was moving up the scale at the paper mill. I'd actually transferred to a different plant, took an even higher position, a production department position, and my wife, 2 kids, Cub Master. My son's in the Cub Scouts. My daughter's in ballet. My wife is working full time, and just life is happening. My mom and dad were visiting for the holidays, and we just did Christmas, and so I think we're probably having a plate full of leftovers or something. And the phone rang. I'll get it. This is before cell phones, so someone's got to get up, walk across the phone, walk across the room, get the phone. And I answered it, and I was familiar with the voice. I knew the person on the other end. It was a military leader. It was an officer, and he just said, he called it a raging bull alert. This is a raging bull alert. When they were doing a mock alert, they would call it a grazing herd alert. A raging bull means this isn't a mock. This is the real deal. And so, I've I don't know, I might even have said, could you repeat what you just said? I thought you said raging bull alert. But he said, yeah, this is a raging bull alert. So your unit's being mobilized.
So when you went over to Germany, that's your first time out of the country, I'd assume.
No, I'd been in Korea in '86.
Oh, okay. So the first time you leave the country, you were in Korea, which is legit. I don't know. Thank God we didn't skip past that.
Yeah.
What is it like as the young man born and raised in Michigan, who, you've worked in different places, you went down to Texas, you're over in Korea. Yeah. What is that experience like? The culture, because I've been over in Japan and China and all over the world. The culture shock was extreme to me, where it's like, wow, this is so different. What was your experience over in Korea, and then what did you find in Germany?
Yeah, it was pretty huge. Korea was, of course, a completely different culture than the U.S., especially in the 80s. It's a little bit more, modernized now, but back then there was still a lot of, uncivilized, unwesternized spaces. And so I was only there for 3 weeks. I was there for a training exercise, but still, preparing to go and getting over there, and I couldn't get past the smell. The country, everything stunk over there as far as I was concerned, but it's probably mostly because of where I was at. And so, not a lot of, didn't get to go out and do much. We were there to train. We weren't there to go out and do much. At the same time, Reagan bombed Tripoli. I don't know if you were born in '87, you probably remember that, but Tripoli was not behaving well. So Reagan dropped a few bombs on him and reminded him who was in charge. And that all happened while I was in Korea. And so, now it looks like I'm not coming home. We're going to war with Tripoli, And so it didn't happen. I mean, it settled down, but it was a scary thing. It was a really scary thing.
That was America's big stick policy.
That's right.
You're going to listen and we're going to beat you over the head with this stick.
If you don't behave, that's right. You're going to.
100%. So you go to Germany and you spent 6 months there.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine you had to be integrating into the culture a little bit there. I mean, I'm sure you're on base a lot, but you get to see the German people and the way. What was Germany like when you were traveling?
I went to Germany, went to Austria, went to Belgium, I went to Liechtenstein, I went all over the place while I was there. We did have the luxury of having days off on the weekends, and once you kind of figured out the transportation system, the trains and the buses, you could go about wherever you wanted. My squad, my guys, we had 5 of us, and we'd rent a car and try and cram 4 or 5 guys in a little teeny import and travel around and see different things. And so that was kind of fun. And we stuck together, kept each other out of trouble, and the real definition of teamwork, take care of the guy to your left and right. And so we did that, even though there could have been a lot of opportunities for them to misbehave. There's a amount of peer pressure that comes with, hey, I got to take care of me so I can help take care of you. And so we stayed out of trouble for the most part, but had a great time.
I was going to say, that had to be incredible moments of your life. Those 6 months in another country with people that you care about, a part of your brotherhood, and you guys are like, you're wanderers, you're adventurers. You're in this place to, see the sights that you can see, to watch people, to try different foods and experience the culture. Like, that really had to be some magical times.
It was a good time. And this is back before cell phones, back before internet, back before any of that.
You were really in the moment. You weren't, hey, let's record
That's
this
right.
whole thing.
No selfies, I got some Polaroids of it, not a lot of pictures of it because you just didn't spend a lot of time taking pictures. But, the part I probably recall the most, different than fast forward to Iraq, back then I would write a letter to my wife. And in the letter I would say, Sunday at 2:00 your time, be near the phone. That's when I'm going to call home. And then I would hope that letter would get there so that they would be by the phone at 2:00 on Sunday. So, and that might have been 7:00 my time or 8:00 my time. I don't know what time it was, but I'd done the calculation, figured out the time, and said, "This is when I need you to be, because I got to go find a payphone now and camp on it until it's my turn to get on it, and try and call home, and then spend 10 minutes talking at home, and so."
So you come home from Germany. It's probably such a blessing to be back home with your family, see your kids, see your wife, and then. How long does that period last before your other tours? And were there any big moments in life where you catapulted to a new level? You got a big promotion at work, anything like that? Leading up to, I can't wait to hear about your tours in Iraq.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the ugly stuff. Didn't take long after I got home and my wife and I were divorced. And so high divorce rate during that period of time. I would say 3/4 of my company, or not company, but my team or my platoon ended up in divorces. And so
why do you think that is?
Because there wasn't good transition. It was drop you off at home, thanks for your service, and turn you loose. You had certain expectations. She had certain expectations. You no longer seen eye to eye. You both had created different lifestyles, different habits, and it just kind of fell apart. And so 6 months after I was home, we were divorced. So,
yeah, that's got to be so incredibly difficult because when you're there, like you said, your lines are running kind of parallel, and if someone gets off, you just kind of fix it. You have the difficult communications, but you keep each other in alignment. You spend 6 months away from someone, and you're growing into a different person. You're taking all these new experiences. You're learning, patterns of behavior that you're going to stick to. She's doing the same thing. So you come back, and if there's not someone there to literally assist in this transition, it's probably such a disastrous event. Hey, welcome back home, and these little things are going to irritate you through the roof, and you're not going to communicate well, and you're going to be frustrated, and you're going to have all these things. I can't imagine how difficult that is because you hear that in veteran stories over and over. Yeah. And as an outsider, it's always like, well, man, why? Because you want to romanticize the idea that, like, well, you're just so happy to come home and see your family white, and they're so happy and grateful to see you that carries you through the experience. But it probably wears off in a couple days or a couple weeks, and all of a sudden it's like, why are all these problems happening?
And you don't know how to answer that question yourself. My son was I was a Cub master in his Cub Scouts, and he was a Cub Scout, and I left all that, left it. And when I got back just in time. It was a couple weeks before Scout Camp. So excited to go with my son to Scout Camp, and him and I are packing, and he's like, "Is Uncle Eric going with us?" I said, "No, he's no, your dad's going with you, And he goes, "I kind of was hoping Uncle Eric could go because my brother had stepped in while I was gone for 6 months, sacrificed, his time. He lived, 2 towns over and would come over and take care of that. So my son didn't miss Cub Scouts. But then my son enjoyed doing things with my brother as much, if not more, than he did with me. And so that was kind of that sharp spear to the chest, and those are the kind of things that kind of tears the family apart. I don't blame my brother a bit. I'm quite grateful that he was there to take care of my son for that time.
I can picture it so well, though, because I was putting myself in your shoes as you're telling that story, and before you even said a spear to the chest, I'm like, dang, that's like a dagger to the heart where you're like, no, that's my role. Like, I'm the one that's there for you. But it's like, you know what? While I was gone, you probably reflect way later on, and you're like, man, thank God someone was there for my son through that experience. But when you first get back, it's almost like, wow, like I'm the dad.
I kind of was that way. I was like, he's not going. It's me. I'm going. Your dad, you and me. And so, but there was other things. My wife became very independent. We married early in life, and so she had to become very independent really fast, and actually became a good habit for her that I didn't like. I didn't like that she was so independent. I liked it better when she depended on me. So, and so.
Yeah, the entire relationship dynamic flips, and now all of a sudden it's like if that doesn't align, if the formula doesn't result in happiness, it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
So you get back home, which is probably a difficult thing too, because you're leaving a brotherhood.
Yeah.
You're leaving people that you were just very close to for a long period of time. Those become your best friends. They become the people that, every day you're enjoying this life with. They're gone.
Yes.
You come back home. Now your family falls apart. You're going through a divorce. Your kid, just told you a moment ago that maybe the uncle is a better cub master than you.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, your world is in chaos at that point. Everything is kind of being torn apart at the pieces. Let's talk about that period of your life. That's probably one of the rock bottoms you've experienced. You probably went to a very dark place.
Actually, I ran from it. I had an opportunity handed to me to go back on active duty, so I took it and went back on active duty and spent another year and a half on active duty and then come home, single. But
where was the active duty at?
Fort McCoy, Wisconsin.
So you were just like, you know what? All this chaos going on, and I'm not welcome here, and my family's in pieces, and I'm gone.
Exactly. I'm out of here.
Then
I'm
I
done.
don't need this. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably a very normal response because
Absolutely.
to go through trying to piece back together, first of all, you got to be able to answer, why is my family broken, and what is my role in this, and what that's going to be brutal. So you went straight back to active duty.
Yep.
That eats away another year and a half of your life where you're not around your kids and things like
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
At any point during that, are you having like a, I don't know how I would want to phrase this, but attack on conscious about like should I have left? Should I be home?
Yeah. Every day.
I can almost picture it.
Every day. It's like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? Should I turn it around? Should I go back? And just, sooner or later that wore off, but there was this, felt like it's so eroded. And then she, I didn't think she'd have me back. And so and finally we just grew apart. And so, we took care of my kids. We had good visitation and we got to see each other and do all that stuff. So that was really good. I mean, it's not the same as living in the same house with them, but.
Well, that's amazing because, I mean, sometimes when families get torn apart, there's like, no, you're going to get the least visitation as possible. I'm going to make it difficult for you to see your kids. You shouldn't have left me. And that is a whole other nightmare. And like when you look at veteran suicide rates and you look at, things that military people struggle with, it's a compounding of factors. It's like not only the stress of what they've gone through, but the stress of their relationships, plus all of these other things, the pressure of the type of father they're supposed to be and they haven't been able to be. I mean, it's just so many compounded pressures. I can see it when I talk to them. So you go to active duty. You're in Wisconsin for a little bit. It's not overseas. When's the next big jump up, either in career or in travel?
Well, let's see. I got promoted right after Desert Storm. I traveled to Wisconsin as a staff sergeant. I got promoted, and so I did that and did that for a year and a half. Not a lot of change in life. Just did that. Met my second wife. Married her. It didn't last very long, but got two great sons out of the deal, and so I'll leave it with that. But then I come back. I got a job working for a military academy, and spent the next several years working at a military academy, which I loved. I loved teaching and training and helping soldiers, leading them and helping them and teaching them to be, as you said earlier, watch them grow, watch them grow into something else. And so I did that for several years.
It sounds like leadership has always been tied closely to your heart since
It really
you found
has.
it. I mean, like just hearing you tell this story when you were first put in charge of the couple people in the squad and the platoon and then staff sergeant and then you're teaching, you are like, you really value being able to bring out greatness in other people or bring out their best. And I can hear it throughout your story. Like it keeps coming up. So you're back home at Michigan when you're teaching there?
Yes, Fort Custer.
Fort Custer.
Yep.
All right, so you're teaching for a while, and then where does the Iraq War come into play? Because that was early 2000s, when you first went?
Yep. So I did that role. I went back to a line unit. I'll try not to speak too much military, but I went back to a line unit as a first sergeant, company first sergeant. So now I have 3 stripes up, 3 stripes down, and the diamond in the middle. And I'm responsible for about 250 soldiers, and so along with a company commander, and I was doing that for a few years. right before I made Sergeant Major, Iraqi Freedom started. The towers, the Twin Towers, and so that was a weird time because anybody in the military wasn't sure. My pretty much all my career had not been, non-combat. The U.S. wasn't at war with anybody. Had some skirmishes, Panama and Grenada and some of those things, but we weren't really at war with anybody. But this was pretty doggone sure we were going to war. There was no way around it. Those two towers come down. If you were in the military and you didn't think we were going to war, you better wake up.
No, I
Things are changing.
I vividly remember I was in my 6th grade math class. I still remember Mrs. Romberger was my teacher, and they came over the intercom, and they actually said the words, "America is under attack."
Yeah.
Those were the exact words. How being in 6th grade.
Great. That's great for 6th graders to hear.
I remember looking at the speaker on the wall, like trying to, did I just hear those words correctly? Like when they told you it was a raging bull, I was like, America is under attack? That doesn't even mean anything to me. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. When that event happened, 9/11, where are you in life? Like, where were you at physically? What were you doing? And then instantly you had to know it was going to be go time. Because like you said, you saw those 2 buildings come down. I grew up in Philadelphia. I've been in New York so many times. I remember the skyline vividly with those Twin Towers. When you're there in person, they are such a magnificent building. When I was young, they were so magnificent. You can't even imagine it coming to the ground, let alone both of them. Yeah. Tell me more about that period, about 9/11.
I actually was having breakfast with one of my platoon sergeants, and we were talking over the training coming up. And we were in a restaurant in Kalamazoo. Happened to be in uniform because we were leaving there to go to duty somewhere. And a lady come over, and the waitress come over and said, "You need to look what's going on our TV over here," because we hadn't heard a thing, And so we got up, got around with it, and so. Look at the TV, and then I had a cell phone. Wasn't much of a cell phone, but I had one. And, it's ringing. Looked down, and, didn't have caller ID. I just had a number, but I recognized the number. It's the unit. The unit clerk is calling saying, WTF, and we're not talking Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What are we going to do? And I'm like, I don't have a clue what we're going to do. I don't even know what's happening yet, And so then the next call, come to commander, next call, platoon sergeant, and then the phone just bing, 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 bing. Like, I don't know what we're going to do. I do know one thing is I'm going to come to the unit. I'm going to change my plan. I'm going to come to the unit, and we're going to figure this out. And so in the meantime, my daughter lived with me. And so I went to her school, discreetly said, can you have Jessica, we're going to go stay at her mom's for a couple of days. And so, she instantly knew. They instantly knew, and so her and I took off and went to the unit, and her mom didn't live too far away, so dropped her off her mom's. And nobody really knew. Those first 4 or 5 days, my company that I work for, Colin, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? How can we help? What should we do? What should we tell our employees? What should we do? I said, man, as soon as I can figure it out, I'll let you know. But right now, I don't even know. We don't know. We didn't know what was happening. Osama bin Laden's name had not been brought up. Probably the Secret Service and all of them had an idea, but we as Americans didn't. And so it just, get out some barricade the driveway. We don't know who's attacking, why they're attacking, who's going to attack next, and just try to, we had a plan in the safe in the clerk's office that was in case we're attacked. Here's how we do it, and got that out and started planning all that stuff. And so it was just, phone call after phone call after phone call. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do?
It's so crazy because before that moment in history, you just would never have thought that mainland USA was going to be attacked again.
Right.
Like all the way back to Pearl Harbor. And I mean, that's not really mainland USA.
Right.
So it's like, I remember it was such a shock, and it did rile up the country, though.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the patriotism and the, we are all one as Americans was at an all-time high.
Absolutely it was.
I mean, Americans were on board that, we're going to do something about this.
Yeah.
Because those are 4,000, I believe, of our citizens that died in that moment. So when do you actually find out, you know what? We're going overseas. This is turning into a full-fledged war. Osama bin Laden, I remember, was like the chief suspect, basically, we would call it. Yeah. When does that all come together?
I didn't deploy until 2006, and so
5 years.
So 5 later, so we'd already been to war with Afghanistan, had already started the invasion in Iraq, and so at that time I'd been promoted to command sergeant major, and so was responsible, along with a battalion commander, for a number of units. And so the first sergeant was a unit of 250, and now I'm responsible for units, And so, and mostly the NCO leadership, not necessarily the whole unit, but NCO leadership. And so we were deploying units, rotating them in and out, and spent a lot of time on the road, spent a lot of time preparing units, getting them ready to go, getting them ready to come home. We had, learned from previous wars that we got to figure out a way to get these folks home and get them home the right way. And so we started working on those types of things and making sure that units were coming home to the best welcome they could and giving them the best transition that we could with the time and money that we had. And so that took place up until 2006.
Having gone through it yourself, where you actually have to come home and your family can be in shambles and stuff, like, what are the things you really do for somebody to get them to integrate back into regular civilian life after they've been over on a tour? Like, what are the things that you found that really seem to make all the difference?
Well, it was really, I had a real passion for it because of that, because by then I knew, what happened. And so by then I wanted soldiers to come home and keep their marriages together and keep their families together and go back to work. And so, the only things I could offer in the limited time we had with them is, start off slow, take it easy, relearn each other, go out on a date, get to know each other. Same with your kids, pick little things to do. And I would say stay home. Just don't go anywhere for a little while and get used to each other, At that point, the spouse, like I said, is usually very dependent, independent, figured out how to do things, and they're used to heading to the grocery store and then going and paying a bill and swinging by a family member, so they're so used to that. You got to kind of observe and watch and see how that works out and grow back into that. And life will never be what it was before you left. It will never be what it was before you left. And so keep that in mind for everything.
I think that is so massive of setting the expectation correctly, because if you, like those words that you just said, if you came back home expecting them to be frozen in time, your family to be exactly what it was when you left, which is natural. I mean, that's the last known experience you have with your family. So you're almost thinking you're walking back into things like
Yep.
everybody was frozen in
Yep.
time. Hey, guys, I'm back. Whereas you used a word that's genius, where you said you almost have to observe. You have to sit back and see, like, what processes have been created in my absence, and where can I start to integrate back in and help and assist and maybe just be there with. Maybe if my wife goes and gets the groceries here, maybe I'll just go with her. And I don't try to change anything. I just observe the way that she set up the battle plans type deal. Because, I think if you come back and you're expecting what once was, you are clearly going to be led to disaster, because things will surely have changed in your absence.
Absolutely.
So setting that mental expectation is probably such a crucial aspect that I didn't think, until you said that today, I never really looked at it from that lens of, man, in their mind, the family is frozen in time, but really they've just missed a massive chunk.
Yeah, I heard a chaplain tell a couple that he said, I would like you each to make a promise to each other right now. And that promise is, for him, the soldier, if you don't feel right, you say you don't feel right. You say things don't feel right. And if he says that to you, listen. And then your promise to him, if you feel like things don't feel right, you say something to him and you listen. And so if more would do that, when they come home and try and understand why things don't feel right, I think there'd be some more success, in marriages after deployments. But we're learning that over time. We're learning some of that stuff over time. And we're not deploying like we were 10 years ago, or even, 5 years ago for that matter. But it took us a long time to figure that out. A long time. A lot of broken marriages, a lot of broken homes. But I think that's where we are in the world, is understanding when he says goodbye, when he comes back, or she, it's going to be different. It ain't going to be the same. And so
having that proper expectation is massive.
Yeah.
Because then it's almost like you're expecting change up front. You're expecting to have to be a little bit fluid. You're looking to observe what patterns are going to be good and bad. Like, you're going into it with that set of eyes versus, where is my wife that I left?
Yeah.
Where is the kid that I left?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, no, this is them, but you have to appreciate the change. You have to
Yeah.
respect their change.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Her independence that she's acquired. You have to appreciate that.
That's right, yeah.
So now you're in charge of leading several units, or the NCOs, right,
Mm-hmm.
of these units.
Mm-hmm.
You're really starting to climb up in rank. At this point in your career, you probably have to be so appreciative of the military and the life that you,
Oh, yeah.
and like the lessons you've gone through, the people that you've interacted with, the stature you've built to.
Mm-hmm.
How does that evolve, from 2006 to 2010, 2015? We'll build that up to where we sit today.
Yeah. So add another dynamic to that coming home is you come home injured. That's what I did. I didn't come home with my unit. I didn't march in the parade. I didn't come home with the unit. I'd come home early with injuries. And so whole different ball of wax. Now you're trying to figure out, at that time, the injuries were severe enough that they were a long time to heal. And so in my case, I got lucky and had a relative that gave me a job where I could finish working through those injuries and get better.
Do you mind talking about the injuries?
Oh no, I didn't get wounded in battle. I had an injury to my diaphragm. I had an internal bleeding going on, and so it required a massive surgery to fix. And so can't be in the theater of combat when that stuff's going on. So shipped me over to Germany and then shipped me to Fort Gordon, Georgia, where a surgeon spent about 9 hours fixing up my insides and then it's an abdominal, I can't think of the word, my abdomen, it was all tore up with incisions, and so long healing process. And so limited amount of activity, limited things I could do, not the hard charging warrior. I got to kind of take it easy for a little while, and wars raging, 07, 08, 07, 08, and combat mobilizations are still happening at a high rate. We're still moving. We're trying to retake Ramadi and some of these other hot spots. And so here I'm broke. I'm busted. I don't work right anymore. And so now retirement's looming. Will I be a whole soldier again? Will I get better? And will I get better fast enough? Which I didn't. I didn't get better fast enough for Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam said it's time to go. And so 2008, turned in my letter and retired in 2009. So.
Wow. I mean, I know from working with athletes, like when you're an athlete or if you're like a go-getter type person, you're injured, man, like the battles that take place in your mind when you feel like you use the word broken. Like you're like, I have an abdominal issue and your abdomen is used for everything.
Everything.
Like anything you want to do.
You can't stand up without it.
100%. You use your core and you don't appreciate that fact until you hurt your core. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't do anything. And then that is so tormenting to the mind where it's like, how can I be this person, this leader, this commander, whatever it is, and I can't even operate.
Right.
That had to have been another period of your life where you went through a lot of mental struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Very dark time. I mean, I struggled. I did not want to retire. It wasn't even on my list of things to do. At 26 years of service, my entire adult life from 18 years old has been in that uniform. And now someone is saying, you're no longer qualified. No one's ever said that to me. You are no longer qualified to be a part of this organization. And I've talked to a number of professional athletes, went through the same thing, mid-20s, late 20s, and someone just walks up to them one day and says, you're no longer qualified. Sayonara, you're out of here.
That's back to that like blank slate thing. Because you're what, like 44 in this period?
Yeah, 45, 46. Yeah.
45, 46, and someone tells you it's over. Like you did your service, you've laid this path, go walk a new one.
That's right.
Take me through that period. Where do you even start to put the pieces back together to figure out like what's next? Because before that, you were on a road and you were just, all you had to do is crush your role in that road and you would excel and you would level up to the next level. You would continue to have opportunity. Yeah. And now all of a sudden somebody comes up and says, see this book, Mike? I'm going to go ahead and shut this. Yeah. It's time to write a new story. You're done.
And you can't use it for reference anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? We're gonna throw it away. You know. Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, what was that period of life like? How do you start to put the pieces back together? Yeah. What are the things you think that were vital from what you had acquired in the
Yeah.
military that kind of took you to the next level, et cetera?
Well, I'll say that throughout my entire military career, I've always felt blessed with lessons. Whether the lessons were hard or the lessons were easy, I'd always consider myself blessed by this lesson. And so I had to kind of look at it that way. When I first came home, I couldn't even spell VA. I had no idea, and so and they told me when I left Fort Gordon, they said, just go home, the VA will take care of you, and I'm thinking like, it's a hospital. If I need help, I'll just go over there. And so I do. I get home and I'm like, I go to the VA and I was like, here I am. And they're like, no, you got some paperwork to do. And so so I didn't know the first thing. I had no idea. Here I am still raw incisions, and released from active duty. And I don't have any idea, no clue how to do this. I had a couple of friends that had retired and, went through the VA process and talked to a couple of them. One literally drove me to the VA and said, this is this and this is this. And so, I fought and fought. And I don't blame the VA. The VA is the largest medical organization in the world. It's huge. I mean, if you imagine all the hospitals and all the places that the VA is in charge of, it's massive. There's going to be things slip through the cracks. There's going to be things that are difficult to understand. And here I am, an educated, fully seasoned, military leader, can't figure the system out. And it's like if I'm struggling,
Everybody's
everybody's
struggling.
having a hard time with this, yeah. So I did I did manipulate the system and figure out the system and do all that. And at the same time, I'm getting ready to retire because I come home in 2007 and didn't retire till late 2008, 2009. And so I was doing the VA process through all that. And I just, I thought to myself when I knew I had to retire, okay, what am I going to do with 26 years of leadership skill? What am I going to do with 26 years of fixing problems and fixing broke equipment and fixing broke people? I'm going to turn it on the VA. I'm going to figure that VA out, and I'm going to be able to share it with everybody how it works. And so I did. I took off after that, and starting in 2009, I spent 6 years supporting surviving families. Service members would die. The surviving family would have a certain amount of benefits that I spent 6 years doing that, just solely doing that. And so that was a contract with the Department of the Army. Learned a ton of stuff about benefits, learned a ton of stuff about military life, military families. And then I left that role and ever since have been helping veterans.
So that's incredible. You came back home, you saw a clear problem with the system, and you were like, you know what, I'm a problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, if I'm struggling with this, and I could see it right away, you're like, everybody's struggling with this. If I can change this is going to affect a ton of the servicemen.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the people that I already care for, that I want to help, if I can make this process any better or remedy some of these problems, I'm going to be drastically helping the people that I've been trying to serve my whole career.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's a perfect transition. It sounds like it probably saved you from way darker times and a lot more depression,
Yeah.
because if you can't find your way, that's like part of the Eric Hipple story and many others. Like when you can't find your way, it is so discouraging.
Yeah.
But you were able to look within and say, like, I do have problem-solving skills. I am a leader, and I do know that there's a problem here. And if there's a problem, then I might as well get to work on it.
Well, I can't walk past stupidity without calling it out. And maybe it's not stupidity, but it looks like it to me. So unless you can explain it to me different, it's stupidity. And so I can't walk past it without calling it out. And so I wouldn't say I got a reputation for being that kind of person, but I learned how to fix things. Sometimes you just got to ask, why is this broke? Not I got it, it's broke. Why is it broke, and why isn't it being fixed? And so that's kind of where I've spent my world is. In this last, my retirement years, which has been 14 years now, I've been retired, has been trying to fix the system, fix the broke problems.
So you said for 6 years you were focusing on that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
What was the direction after that? Because the 6 years puts us somewhere around like 2014, 2015.
Yep, 2014, 2015.
What was the directional change at that point?
I had an opportunity to go under contract with the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency here in Michigan. And so I did that for 5 more years, and that's where I had that opportunity to look at those organizations, figure out where organization wasn't working or where the gap was at, or where here's a benefit and here's a soldier who needs it and what's keeping them from getting together. And so I had that for 5 years, got a chance to, closed those gaps on a lot of that stuff. And really had kind of free reign to do that, in my part of the world, which was Southwest Michigan. And so myself and 9 of my colleagues, that's what we did. We did our best to create a community for veterans, or a community of veterans that had all the exact same support and resources available to them. So nobody got something other than somebody else.
That's almost like what we were talking about before the podcast. Like, I know a guy. Like, I
That's
can
right.
introduce you to someone that you can trust to get this issue handled. That is such a good feeling. Like, like, the feeling of if you call a company and you can't speak to someone on the phone, right, and it's nothing but prompts, or I hate to say this, but it's going to bother some people, but it is what it is. Or you get someone that can barely speak the language,
right,
and you're going to try to articulate a very complex issue and hope that they're going to solve it.
Yeah.
You just feel like I am wasting my time and I'm wasting my breath. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
To look at someone in the eyes or speak to them on the phone and for them to say, I can get this handled, this is the person you need to go to, is like such a lifesaver. It takes away that like immense pressure, right? That weight of, I'm never going to get the benefit I need. I have been struggling endlessly. Nobody's here to help me. That's what cripples veterans.
It does, absolutely.
It cripples them. And it's like, if they know, you know what? Mike said he's got a guy. And I'm going to trust the fact that if I work with this guy, that this problem can be handled.
Yeah.
When you looked at the VA system, was there anything that stood out to you why it was so broken? Because for so long, you have people saying the VA is a literal nightmare. And I don't believe it's the workers at the VA. It's something about the system itself. Is it just the magnitude? Is it the fact that we haven't brought it to the modern era where, like, in a simple app, I can click and with a passcode or something, I can access my digital record? What were the major things that you came across in those 6 years where you're like, this has to be changed if we're going to fix the broken links between these people?
Yeah. I have no problem with the VA. I want to say that, first of all, they have changed my life. They have saved my life. I have no problem with the VA. The VA is a government system. It is bound by regulations. It is bound by stiff budgets. They don't have the ability to try other methods of getting things done. This is the only method they have. And so when we go to anywhere, whether it's the local hospital or the VA, we are looking for medical attention. And we want that attention. We want that quality of care. Well, the professionals, I consider everybody that works at the VA a professional, right down to the guy that mops the floor. The professionals at the VA are bound to only a certain amount of things they can offer. And so I want more, they can't give more. And so that's a hard pill to swallow for those of us that, live in a civilian environment where you go to the hospital. You can get anything you want. You can get your eyebrows attached to your ass if you want, if you got the money. And so VA ain't that way. This is the only way we can do this. And so it puts us needing medical support from the VA in a tough situation. And then they also have a massive amount of veterans and a small amount of caregivers. And so, some of those doctors see 40, 50, 60 patients a day. And so it's just, they don't have time to give you good quality care. They just don't.
100%. So you're really saying the people's hands are tied way more than people realize.
Yes.
Because, like you said, if you go to a hospital, you're expecting them to go all in to give you any form of care that's going to get you through this. And it's like, man, there's so many hurdles and so much red tape they have to work through, and their hands are bound in certain things. So it's not that the people aren't trying to service the veterans or help them out. It's that it's the system itself that has to slowly be modified for efficiency over time. If you're a doctor seeing 60 people a day, 40, 50, 60 people a day, there is no way you're making a tremendous impact on the majority of them because you are too overwhelmed.
Right.
It would be hard for us to sit down with 5 people a day trying to fix their life because so much of it is your mental state, the decisions you're going to make, the foods that you're eating, the exercise you're doing. It's a very complex thing to get your life back together.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I going to do? See you for 10 minutes and give you a solution to that?
Right. Yeah.
No one should be expected to be able to.
Yeah. First, I get 1 minute to look at your past record, and then I get 10 minutes with you to figure out what you need to move forward. You can't do it. You just can't do it. And so, it's sad, but it's the world we live in. We've doubled, tripled, quadrupled the amount of veterans going to the VA in the last 20 years, from 75 to 2001, no war. And so there wasn't a lot of new recipients of VA benefits. And so come 2001 till even today, millions of new recipients. And so it makes it tough. It makes it tough. Like I said, I don't have any qualms with the VA. They've been very, very, very good to me. I just got to know how the system works. I got to call and say, you said when I was there Tuesday that you would put in a prescription, and I haven't seen it yet. Can you double back and look? And say, oh, sure enough, here it is. Okay, we'll do it right now. We apologize. So, there's that kind of stuff. And you can't call and be like, you guys are assholes. It's tough
100%.
sometimes.
Setting the expectations correctly. It's
That's
almost
right.
like when you had to come back home and you have to have your expectations set correctly.
That's right.
You need to set your expectations correctly when you're going to deal with the VA. And just know that, there's going to be some difficulty. But if you stay on it and you know the right guy, or you find someone that has the right connections, you can work through the difficulty.
Yeah.
It's not that somebody is barring your entrance, refusing to give you the help that you need. It's a process, and it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
So nowadays, are you fully retired? Are you still working for the VA?
I still work. No, I work. I'm the executive director of the VFW National Home in Eaton Rapids, Michigan, south of Lansing, where we take care of veterans. We take care of veterans and their family. And so veterans come live with us. We have 42 beautiful brick homes, averaging from 1,500 square feet to 2,500 square feet that they live in while they figure out life. I will say that veterans don't always transition the minute they leave the military. Some take a couple of years to figure out how the world works on the other side of the military. And so a lot of times they get themselves too deep in problems that they can't dig themselves out. We want to be able to help dig them out. That's what we do. And so,
man, that is awesome. I interviewed Kate Melcher, and she was talking about
yeah.
the Fisher House down in Ann Arbor, and it sounds similar to that, but except there's one house, obviously, where there are people with medical needs.
Yeah. So
yours is...
took advantage of it last year. I had a major surgery at Ann Arbor VA, and my wife stayed at the Fisher House while I was there for 7 days. And so it was great, because where would she have gone elsewise?
100%.
I mean, she could have probably got a hotel 5-6 miles away or something, but this is right next to the VA.
100%. Yeah, so I remember when she was telling me that, I remember thinking, what a great service. While you're in for surgery, your wife can stay right there,
Right.
be taken care of, be surrounded by people that understand the pain
They're
that she's
just
going
like
through.
you, yeah.
100%. What a good environment to be in a time of chaos, in a time of struggle.
Yeah.
Your organization is more of getting people back on their feet while they integrate into society.
Right.
That's
So
amazing.
I call it slow transition. That's what we're doing is, they get there, they make some goals for themselves. We have case managers that help them get those goals accomplished. And so everything from relationship skills to saving money for a mortgage, or, getting mortgage ready. We've got bad credit. We're trying to fix our credit. Those are all things they can do there with our help. We have a staff of 40-plus people that are there to help them with that stuff.
Wow, that's incredible. So you're literally doing life coaching. You're getting these people back together to get them out into the world in a way that they feel like they weren't just dropped off and hey, good luck. It's you got a couple people pulling your arm or pulling your hand or carrying the boat with you, saying, hey, we got this thing. We're going to get you back on track.
Yeah.
Where does the funding come from this? Is this a part of their benefits? Is this money that is donated? Is this a nonprofit?
Yeah.
How do you fund
This is a nonprofit. And so what's interesting is we're getting ready to celebrate 100 years. In 2025, we'll have been around for 100 years. So the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, back in 1925, chartered the VFW National Home. And throughout the years, they've been the VFW and its auxiliary in a group called the Military Order of the Cootie, which is a Shriner-like group of the VFW. They have been the primary fundraisers to keep the place open and running and programs going. And so they're our primary source of income. And but we're a nonprofit. We're a Michigan nonprofit, have our own board, and a lot of the VFW and auxiliary members are on our board. But they've fundraised and been like I said, probably 80% of our financing over the 97, 98 years. And so it's a great place. A lot of people don't know about it. That's just the way things go. We're conveniently located in Eaton Rapids, Michigan, middle of nowhere, and so it's okay. So beautiful place. We have walking trails, and we have a gymnasium to work out. We have places for kids to play. We have 4-H program. We just have so much stuff going on there. And the family can come there. Mom and dad can work through their issues. Kids can just skip out. Just go be kids. Go hang out at the gym. Go down to the ballpark. They can be kids while mom and dad takes care of mom and dad stuff. And so, and it's you just could see the relief on the families' faces when they get there after a month or so, and just they're life is we can get this figured out. And so for me that means, considering my history, that means a lot to me to see them have a place where they can just chill out and figure it out.
It makes so much sense because a lot of times when people's lives are in chaos or when they're in depression or struggling so bad, it's like they're drowning in water. The idea of like what they're going to do when they get out of the water is foreign. They're drowning, they're flailing, you're giving them a place where at least like they can get out or they can float. You give them something that's going to save their life. They can take a deep breath and they can almost start to look around and say like, okay, what needs to be worked on? When you're drowning, the only thing you're worried about is not drowning. You're not thinking about,
That's right.
How you get your credit in order, or how do I fix these parts of my life? How do I have better communication skills? You only think about, I'm drowning, and this is priority one.
That's right.
You're giving them a fresh start to be able to sit back down and blueprint how do we change life.
Yeah, and I will tell you that it's not responsibility free. So the military uses the term crawl, walk, run. I'm sure you've heard that. So we go from run back to crawl, but we got to get back to walk. And we got to get back to run, and they have to sign a contract that says we are willing to do that. We're not going to just sit here for 4 years in this house and chill out and buy new trucks and buy new cars. We're going to put our money in the bank. We're going to save. We're going to fix our credit. We're going to fix our relationship. And in 4 years, when it's time to go, we're going to have the money to buy a home.
I'm actually so glad to hear that because a lot of organizations, I mean, not to speak poorly upon like welfare, things like that, but what tends to happen is if you take away all of their problems, you just give them money, you do this, that, and the other thing, and you give them a full sense of complacency, they don't really feel like crawling or walking anymore. If I'm going to throw you in a massage chair and you're going to be kicked back and then you can jump in a little, stroller, and maybe walking doesn't sound so enjoyable anymore. I love that you said the point is to get you back on track. It's like when you have an injury. If you're an athlete and you injure your leg really bad, I might give you crutches for the first period.
Yeah.
But then you got to work to get off the crutches.
That's exactly right.
Maybe you go down to 1. Maybe it's painful. Maybe you have to physically rehab and it's uncomfortable and you don't want to do it. But at the end of the day, you need to have healthy legs.
That's exactly what we do.
And it's like you're getting them to have a healthy mind again. Yeah, we'll take away the chaos, the pain and struggle for a little bit, but it's on you. And we're going to push you. And if you're willing to level up and grow, then this is going to be a great experience for you.
Yeah.
But like I love that you said that up front because I was almost picturing if you don't push people like that, it turns into I'm a victim of circumstance. I'll just stay here forever and I'll live off someone else's dime. And then honestly, you're going to rob them of the life they deserve. Yeah. They deserve to go get that mortgage. They deserve to go get their family back together. Right. Yep. It's like, so yeah, you're pushing them. And some people might be like, oh, well, they've been through a lot. The other side of like coming out of the darkness is one of the most rewarding periods of people's lives.
That's why I think yard sales are so effective. You might find that a funny thing to say, but it feels better if I paid for it than it does if you gave it to me. And so we want them to feel like they paid for it. We don't want them to think we got a free house for 4 years. As a matter of fact, you don't get a free house for 4 years. You get a free house for a year, and if you don't pony up your end of the bargain, you got to go someplace else. And so it's in a contract when you move in.
That's really great. So how do people get selected or picked to go to this organization? Like, let's say it was a military veteran that's struggling tremendously. How do they even reach out to your organization? Let's say they heard this podcast like, man, like that would be incredible. How are they selected? How are they referred, et cetera? VFWnationalhome.org. Go to that website, punch the Get Help button, and it'll take you there from there. So, yeah, it's really simple, real simple process. I say you don't got to be homeless, and it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire. I would say if you're a millionaire, we're probably going to have a hard time approving your application. But you know what? It's not about how much money you got in the bank, whether you're homeless. We have families that live there that the soldier's still serving in the Guard, and they're deployed regularly, and mom has got physical disabilities, and 2 of the children are special needs. And so, they deserve a break.
And so this is a great place for them to take a break while dad figures out, what's next in his military career. So simple as that. Single moms, single dads, just that you're trying to make it work on one income, trying to make it work while they're trying to go to college and trying to work. And so it's a perfect place for people like that are trying to figure it out.
I love that you just said it's not difficult, because in the beginning of this, we were talking about the VA. We were talking about, when you just feel like, man, this isn't going to work out. Like, I'm trying to talk to somebody on the phone that doesn't even speak the language, and I'm like, oh my God, this is never going to work. You're like, hey, we'll get it handled. Reach out. If you fit the, mold of what we need, we're going to get you taken care of, and we're going to help you get you back on your feet. So, Mike, if there's anything else you want to cover on the podcast today, I'm more than happy to. If you'd like to shout out the organization one more time and say anything you'd like, let's put it all out there. I really hope this, episode gives some insight and some perspectives. And, someone else can think, you know what? When you watch someone through a podcast, it's almost like you get to know them. Mm-hmm. And if they get to see this podcast and go, you know what? That's the guy I need to reach out to. Yeah. That can be life-changing for many people.
Absolutely.
Families, so.
Yeah, they're welcome to reach out to me anytime. VFWnationalhome.org is the organization. You can go there. You can find me, any one of my staff. And I'll say that this is the perfect place for me. A guy that just turned 60 years old, that spent his entire life taking care of military and veterans. It's the perfect place for me to be at this point in my life, because every day I help somebody. It's super simple to just help somebody every single day. And what I want people to walk away with is that example. And so the VFW National Home helped me, and now I'm going to help others. And so the Army helped me, the VA helped me, and I'm helping others. And so part of our mantra, or part of our motto there at the National Home, is you have to be a part of the community. And when you leave this community, you're moving to another community, not to a house. You're moving to another community, and be a part of that community. That's how we grow. You're building a community of storytellers, and we're all a part of a community. And so if people can get that in them, we have residents that move in, don't like their neighbor, and we got to mediate sometimes. And so guess what? You're going to have to get to like them, because you're going to be next to them for the next couple of years. It's like in basic training when you get in a fight with a guy in the bunk next to you. The next night you're sleeping with holding hands. You're going to get to like each other one way or another. And so we're a community. We just got to keep growing. So.
Well, man, I love it, and I've really enjoyed the podcast today. Like I said, I hope people pull a lot of good insights from this. I hope that, more veterans know that there are people out there fighting for them. Mm-hmm. Because one of the worst feelings in the world is when you feel like no one's on your side,
right,
or you feel helpless or hopeless, or like nobody is going to be able to solve this. It's like there are people out there fighting the good fight, and there are people out there that want to see you win and want to see you back on your feet. You just got to find those people.
That's right.
So